I've lost you. Broadcast live. Sorry.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rowing Chat Directory. I'm Rebecca Caro, and today my guest on the directory is Simon Johnson. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Good to see you. So, you and I have met a couple of times and been around the sport for many, many years together. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your personal background in the sport of rowing.
Well, that's a good one. I started rowing when I was at school. I was a blue coat boy in Sonning back in, 1968, I suppose, is when I started rowing, just schoolboy rowing. And we were quite lucky in those days. We had a young, exciting rowing master that had very fast cars. And it just took us on board. He's an ex-Hampton boy. I think he won Henley a few years before, a chap called Tony Rogers. And it just inspired us. And from that, we kind of got into rowing, both myself and my two brothers. So we were three boys in the same boat, all at the same school. And it was, that's what got the bug. And I think even before I ever just sat in a boat, I remember my brother telling me about rowing in a pair, a Cox clinker pair, I think it was. And so I went out and whittled away with a piece of wood and made myself a wooden Cox pair. With little wire outriggers, which I think I've still got somewhere, just on what he told me. I'd never actually seen a boat, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. And I think generally impressed the family, but I used to whittle away with wood and things like that as a small boy. So that was my introduction to rowing. Then got into rowing, and then from there went on. I think didn't leave school till about 72, but at 71 we actually rowed in a four with a chap called Tony Hutchin and my two brothers. And I think we're probably one of the first crews to row at Henley with three brothers in a Coxless four, which was 1971. So I think joined the stewards in 71. So I'm probably one of the older stewards when it comes down to, I think I've been a member for, it'll be 50 years this year, won't it? But anyway, so yeah.
Since then, you started a rowing business, so you weren't just a rower. You started Rowing Solutions as a business.
Basically,
how did that get going?
But basically, I went out to Germany at the end of 75 with my brother. We went out to Rome. We met a guy called, everybody remember, Peter Michael Kolbe. And so we then went out to Germany, met a guy called Heinz Siebers, who was one of Peter's coaches, lovely chap. And then when I came back from Germany, I'd been working, funny enough, you'll laugh, as a dental technician. That was my trade, as it were. And so knew a bit about plastics, materials, and very much more a hand-working type of character when it comes to it. And so when I came back, all I wanted was my own business. And I thought, well, I love rowing. I'll find something to do with rowing. And so it started from that. We started making rowing seats. And I think within, 4 years, we were making about 3,500 seats a year, sold them all over the world, even Australia, New Zealand. I mean, you go to Lucerne and you'd find a couple of girls from deepest, darkest Russia with a couple of our seats on their boat. It was just, it was quite strange. It was a very interesting product, but basically it was made on a lathe. Wood turning is what I was doing. And I don't know if you remember Andrew Sims from Sims Racing. Anyway, Andrew said to me one day, I think just before Christmas, because we'd been making handles. Sorry, it's a little bit confusing, but we'd been making the oar handles for the concept blades that they were the agents for. And he said, can you make me a rowing seat for 20 quid or whatever it was? We had a budget. And so I sat down, I think Christmas Eve, I had this brainwave where basically I made two circles with a hole in the middle. And it's hard to explain without seeing it, but everybody that will know my seat, it was made in two halves, turned on a lathe. But we got it down to a fine art where we could actually make a complete rowing seat. I think it took work time about 3.5 minutes. I mean, it was, but all made out of wood, a bishi. And we used to glue up, I think, some 90 seats a day, something like that. And yeah, interesting, crazy business. My brother was living in South Africa. He used to make the wheels and the axles and little bushes. And yeah, so anyway, that's how the rowing thing started. First of all, making oar handles for Andrew, and it just progressed from that to making, widgets. But I think one of the more interesting products that we made were fins and rudders for Janousek, because that was, coming up with a system type fin, everybody been using all sorts of things where you slotted the fin or you glued it in, and we came up with a very simple machine, bit of aluminium with a slot in it with a grub screw at the front. It made, as soon as you ding your rudder or your fin or whatever, you could easily replace the bits. So that was the idea. And so that was actually one of the craziest things that we ever, it just went on and on and on for many years, that. But yeah, so from that, we moved on a little bit. We had the recession like everybody else in the, I suppose early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And it died. I mean, most of the boat builders, I think when I started, I think we were 14 boat builders in the UK, in different, I'm just trying to Burger Shell, and there were about 3 or 4 Sims boat builders. There was even Phelps, I think was just finishing, but yeah, it just changed. Everything changed dramatically, and everybody started then, Janousek was the survivor, I suppose, and over the years, Carl Douglas will always survive, but it's been a very interesting time in rowing as to what did happen. Where do we go from 14 boat builders building? Did they not change? Did we not become more innovative with our ideas? I don't know, but there is only really, I suppose, Janousek, Stanley that exists. Okay, I'm trying to think who else there is. There isn't actually, is there? No. But anyway, so from that, next level was, what do we do? And Pat Fennessy, who you might remember by name, dear Pat, Dr. Pat, he was actually in a unit next door to mine in a local farm, and he was building sculling boats. And we got chatting one day, and there was a lot of controversy, and I think it was around about the time there was a young boy, I believe, at Reading at the time, had unfortunately drowned at Christmas, went out in sort of...
I remember that very, very sad occasion, yeah.
And I remember that I said to Pat, look, we've got to do something, boats, wash, health and safety, you try and come up with sort of things. So we came up with this idea, we're going to build coaching launches that are a little bit more stable, more responsive, can steer well, all the sort of things you want. But it meant that there was an opportunity, not for that reason of because somebody unfortunately died, but because it was so necessary at the time. We came up with basically a fold boat. So we bought some sheet material from a local company, and we made a foldable boat. So we cut out the shape of a catamaran hull, and then folded the thing up, and then glued it and riveted it and put a deck on it. And I think we sold, I think, about 24 of these things around sort of Europe and the UK. And they actually, I see one floating upside down still in the river up at Reading. It's been there, but it's still floating. So yeah, they weren't all bad. But then from that, I went to the boat show, which I used to do because you want to see what's going on in the world. And I met a company called Laser, bless them, and they just brought out the Dart 16, which was a roto-molded polyethylene, which to me was just like, this is the new world. And it just ticked all the boxes from the construction, the durability, and so on. And so we went with them and we sort of designed the thing around, basically it's Tupperware. I mean, if those that don't know what polyethylene is, but it was what they call a tri-laminate. So it's incredibly durable, incredibly tough. Anyway, we moved on, and we then went to a company called Topper, who were really good, made a beautiful boat. But in more recent years, about 9 years ago, a company called RS Sailing came out, which I call my sister company. RS happens to be Rowing Solutions. It's not, it's RS Sailing. And they've been really, really good. And they have a super product. I mean, it's beautifully engineered and very... I like stealthy, if you like, for want of another word. So we've worked with them for the last 7-8 years. Really lovely company, and with a super product. And from that, we've developed where we're going now, which is down the electric road, trying to save the planet. Hopefully, who knows? Dare I say, it's an interesting time in our sport. Obviously, we are very much trying to produce simple, durable product and that's going to last, because there's lots of things that we all know about in rowing that just don't last very long. and so, yeah, the coaching launch, whether we like it or not, it gets used more than any other boat in the club, and it gets used by the people that probably shouldn't be using it in the first place. But it's just, it's one of those materials, one of those things that everybody needs for whatever reason, be it not just coaching, but you've got to think about, you know, can you, in a situation, can you rescue people? And that's what we've kind of based it around, that it's a dual type of product. And what we have now is quite interesting, because we're going electric. We've been working for the last 8 years with a couple of companies, one particularly in China, which is Easy Outboards. They've produced a very, very simple, very robust, and I'd like to say probably the only current small industrial electric outboard. The company, Philip Yeo, he actually did a PhD at Cambridge. And I said to him many years ago, I said, look, when you ever go back to China, I said, make me an electric outboard if you have a moment. He was building electric motors basically for bicycles. That was his main market. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, and about 2 years later, a large box arrives, and there's an electric outboard in there. And it was basically a conventional outboard, and he put an electric motor on the top. It was great, still have it, still works fine. But from that, he's developed it on, and there's a company in the UK, Barras, they've taken on the dealership for that, which is probably, they're the biggest Mercury dealers in the UK. Mercury Mariner dealers in the UK, and they're now selling it, and it's a great product. I mean, it's early stages. I mean, I was talking yesterday to a chap called, what's his name, Lord, Jonathan Lord, and he's a British expat. He's living in the States. They've developed a product which we're going to be working with, because the States is probably at the moment will be one of our, once we can get the boats shipped there, be one of our biggest markets. And we build between 60 boats, 65 boats a year. That's our current thing. I mean, it's dropped off a little bit in the last few months, but we aim to build. I mean, we're capacity-wise, we make everything in-house, so we could build probably double that if we had to, with a little bit of innovation. But I'm not sure if I want to. No, I do. I mean, it's a great business, and hopefully my sons are coming into the business. Certainly my oldest son, and maybe Jerome will come into the business and take it on. It's a very interesting business, and in the last, as I say, 8 years. But we've been working. People have to understand with electric, it's not about the actual motor. It's about the battery. It's your fuel source is always the biggest issue. And trying to explain, I think I might have sent you a little article that we put together, which we tend to send out to customers. I mean, this week we've had, I think, 6-7 inquiries just on electric. And it all takes time. From the moment people usually make an inquiry, you can set your watch to 2 years. From the moment they ask to the moment they buy. So, you know, we're sort of selling to people that we probably met 2 years ago right now. But it just takes time for people to understand with electric, it's not going to be like petrol. It's going to be a different type of product, if you like. But the boat that we've designed in the last, with the lockdown and things, given us a chance to do what I probably built, I think the Henley boat, we do the film boat for Henley Royal, and we had what I call a foldable deck. So the concept is the whole of the front of the boat is built on a parallelogram and basically can fold down flat. So the biggest expense over and above, obviously, the boat is transport and shipping them, you know, around the globe. I mean, we sell in, I think, to 24 different countries at the moment, and you know, but it's easy to sell 2 boats into 24 countries and sell 24 boats into 1 country. So we've worked very hard at the export, and hopefully we have agents in about 12, I think it is, different countries around the world. And yeah, it's you're never going to sell thousands of these things, but I think the quality is always something. My boss, when I lived in Germany, I had a very good boss, and he taught me a few really good rules. He said, if you're ever going to build something by hand, it has to look like it's made on a machine. And that was something that will always sell. you know, and that, I mean, if you look at Empaka, you look at, I mean, Janousek in the day, it was the first boat that was built by hand, but actually looked like it was made on a machine. And that's one of the rules that's always stuck with me. And yeah, I think quality, there's always a place for quality. And I'd like to think we're, dare I say, building quality. It's, yeah, that's the most important.
So, the motor can be charged just with a 13 amp plug, a regular socket.
Yeah.
The wire.
Thing is with the electric, again, I mean, certainly within Europe and most, dare I say, countries that are sort of involved in the RCD, Recreational Craft Directive, which is a European directive. I mean, there's all kinds of rules and regulations, but 48 volts is kind of where you've got to be. Anything over that, the regulations become a minefield, quite honestly. And probably the risks with electric, it becomes dangerous, probably not quite the right word. It becomes a little bit complex. There's a company, as they were talking to in America, I mean, they're looking at 110 volt and 420 volt or something, which is, it has some advantages, but it's not realistic. You know, water and electric's never mixed anyway. But we've worked very closely with a British company. I mean, to be fair, 90% of all batteries are probably made in China. They're then assembled somewhere, you know, Panasonic or whatever in Japan, but actually assembled. And what is the real trick to all of this is the battery themselves. There's lots of different levels, different qualities of battery. And this is where people have to be really a bit savvy. When you're looking at batteries, you know, where do they come from, and so on. But I think once you get into or start to understand the principles of the electric, I mean, you've got to have, they call it BMS, battery management system, which is a big part of the battery, to be able to manage that battery, that it's going to last. I mean, if you're paying close to £5,000 for the battery system, but that's going to last you 7 to 10 years. And so to get your costs back on actually charging the thing, we use an expensive chargers because we can charge them up in a couple of hours, which again is important. You can turn them around. You can buy a £50 charger. You can buy an £800 charger. But the nice thing about what we're using, I believe, lithium phosphate battery system, is that it's so durable. The temperature range is huge, and it's reliable, and it's safe. And I think this is something people equally, you know, you've got to understand. You're going to spend that kind of money. You want it to work, obviously, but you've got to feel confident about what you've got. And lithium phosphate is probably the way to go. There will be something else.
There will always be something else.
There'll always be something else. And if you wait for something else, you know, we'll have grey hair.
Simon, thank you. It's been brilliant having this quick chat with you.
Okay, thank you.
People can connect with you at rowingsolutions.com.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And I look forward to hearing more about innovations in battery technology for coaching boats.
Lots to come. Lots and lots to come. Thank you.